Hello, and welcome in to Betting Life's college football pregame betting show. I'm your host, Thor Nystrom, joined as always by NBC Sports' Eric Froton and the coach, Gene Clemons. Over the next 90 minutes, we're going to be giving out our favorite side bets, favorite totals, favorite player props, and at the end of the show, as always, we're going to bring in college fantasy football godfather Mike Bainbridge for some DFS talk and also talk about some props. We'll be answering all your audience questions as well. So if you type those into the chat, if you're on YouTube, we'll get to those as we go. Click the like button if you would as well for us. Click the subscribe. And if you're watching us on Twitter, if you don't mind sharing the link, that would help us get the word out there as well. Boys, we have another packed college football Saturday. So without any further ado, let's get right into it. Gene, let's head to Iowa City for a noon kickoff today. The Iowa Hawkeyes, my Iowa Hawkeyes, repping today, hosting the Washington Huskies. Huskies coming off a big win. This line in the market right now, it's toggled between 2.5 and 3. I think live right now we've toggled back down to 2.5 here as we approach kickoff within the next couple hours. What do you like in this game, Gene?
Yeah, it's actually all week it's been doing it. I've been watching the line movement on this all week because I really like Washington in this game. I think that Washington can not only run the ball, but they have an ability to pass. I think that's where the line of demarcation is, if you will. Iowa not really going to be able to pass it that well. Washington passes it well. Like they're able to put the ball in the air. I think that they're going to be flying high off of their win last week. That's going to give them confidence. They're going to go into a tough Iowa team, like no doubt about it, tough Iowa team. But whenever I see that 2.5, right, that 2.5 always tells me, okay, they really don't like the home team, regardless of where the 2.5 is. If the 2.5 is on the home team, they really don't like the home team. If the 2.5 is on the away team, they really don't like the home team. So for me, I'm going Washington here. I think they went out right, regardless of where the line ends up at. Possibly a low scoring affair, under type of affair, but I do think the Washington Huskies pull this one out.
First on, this is an interesting prop handicap here. Both of these pass defenses are better than the run defenses. Certainly informs my handicap on the player props of this one. What about you? You like any in this game?
Yeah, as we've seen with Washington, as you alluded to, and just an excellent pass defense, ranked 9th in passing success rate, first nationally out of 135 teams in terms of passing completion rate. Only 47% of those passes getting completed. That's bad news for Iowa because, as we've seen with your boy, Cade McNamara, and you warned me last week. I got to give it to you. You warned me about Cade McNamara last week. I didn't listen to you on the pass attempts. I thought it would be a script where they would have to pass, and it was 35-7. They just couldn't pass. And that's all Mr. McNamara here. In terms of what he's done over the past 4 games, 98, 62, and 99 passing yards, with the lone exception of the over being Troy, where they beat him 38-21. He got 176. He's currently lined at 130.5 passing yards against this elite Washington pass defense. I think we're going to see a lot of Caleb Johnson today, and that will not entail a lot of Cade McNamara. If this game gets out of hand like it did last week, then we'll see Brendan Sullivan. We might see Brendan Sullivan if it doesn't get out of hand, if they can't keep moving the ball. I just think this is a bad spot for McNamara. Give me the under 130.5 passing yards.
Yeah, I agreed with that. Washington's pass defense is awesome. Jedfish did a really good job over the offseason bringing in transfers to help out that secondary, and it's really, really good. The run defense legs way behind for Washington last year. That was also the case. They made the national title. Obviously, we saw that when Michigan ran them over and some other teams in advance of that. You have the same sort of tilt with that defense this year. I'm going over on Caleb Johnson. I don't care what his number is. He's going to go over that. The live one right now, it's all the way up to 113.5. That thing, Froton, that thing opened like just a tick over 100, right?
Right around 100. Yeah, it was right around that mark. And now we've seen steam up, 13 yards or so. Frankly, this week, if I had to go by, over the course of this season, we're in week 7. I've seen more line movement this week than any week up to this point, and I think a lot of that has to do with the corrections coming from conference play.
Yeah, Caleb Johnson last week against Ohio State, and he, by the way, he still went over his number. He had 15 carries for 86 yards. That still got him over. The other 4 games this season, 119, 187, 173, 206. This Washington run defense is more in line with those opponents as opposed to Ohio State. I think he gets over. And I also really like Jonah Coleman, a guy that I faded, did not have success with against Michigan. I think against was a Rutgers game. So we're 1 for 1. We'll try to make it 2 for 3, I suppose, in this one, with going over on Jonah Coleman this time. Iowa's defense, they're also really, really, really good against the pass, but Iowa's run defense right now, 102nd in success rate, 116th in opportunity rate, 132nd in stuff rate. Not the best news going up against Jonah Coleman, who's just a berserker and a tackle breaker. Those would be my plays in this one. I would even consider an under on Will Rogers as well, because that Iowa pass defense. I agree with you on McNamara. I think this is a game where you go over on the rushing player props, you go under on the passing ones, maybe even look into the receivers on the Washington side for guys to fake, because Iowa has a really good secondary. I'm staying away from the side. Gene, I don't disagree with anything you said about this game. My system's line on this game is Iowa minus 2.2. At the 3 for sure, I would have leaned towards Washington. Right now, it's you sort of get back into that quagmire, and where at least my system feels that it's a fair market price. I don't know if I could bet on Iowa in this spot, though. I think Washington matches up decently well. Not betting this side, it's a prop game for me, but yeah, I would probably lean Washington, and particularly, of course, if that line gets back to 3. Moving to the SEC now, another noon Eastern kickoff here. South Carolina travels to Alabama. Alabama in this one favored by 21.5. This is your sort of Alabama. They've been toggling spots. They were obviously up for the Georgia game. Then they were in the deflate spot against Vanderbilt. Now do we get the classic 1 week after you get upset that they roar back and they're ticked off? Gene, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what you get. I think they're going to be pissed off. They're going to realize they really, really let one go. Obviously, it's not as dire as it used to be back when there was only 4 teams going to the college football playoff. But still, it's going to be all about positioning for these teams now. And so I think Alabama will be really, really like keyed up. South Carolina scoring defense is not bad, but it's not really about how you've played. It's about who you play, right? It's about who you play. And this Alabama offense, when it is clicking, it's one of the best in the business. And I think they'll be highly motivated. The hook really scares me now, because I'm seeing it at 21.5, and I never really like giving that hook up, but I would take Alabama and lay these points, because I just think they're going to be highly motivated to get the job done, and not just get the job done, but get the job done in fantastic fashion, because they have a guy that's up for the Heisman. They have other guys that they're looking to feature, especially in their passing game. I just think this is one where South Carolina might keep it tight early, but eventually Alabama's going to get it out of there.
Froton, games we get over the 3 touchdowns, it always gets interesting in the player props, because that's a territory where you start to get into wonky game scripts in the second half. What do you like? How are you approaching a game like this? How do you see it? And do you have any plays in this one?
Well, I like how you start this off with game script. And let's look at what South Carolina did last game against Mississippi, which defensively we were thinking, all right, well, maybe there's something that South Carolina can do here. 3 points they scored in that game. We were completely marginalized, and frankly couldn't do anything on the ground or in the air, because we don't expect Lenore Sellers to be, Peyton Manning out there when it comes to throwing the ball. We expect him to run it. If you look at what they've done, South Carolina over the season, only 87th in success rate running the ball, and that's brutal, because they're 118th in yards per dropback. So, in terms of offensively, they're not good. They lean on their defense and their exceptional defensive line. But, dude, they're playing Alabama here. And like you said, we got a 21.5 point spread. I don't think Alabama's going to have trouble moving the ball. This is a much more complete team, I think, than, Kentucky that they dealt with earlier in the season, and they could kind of go with. I'm taking under Raheem Sanders' 45.5 rushing yards. I'd seen it get up to 47.5 earlier. I believe it was on ESPN Bet. Still hanging around 44, 45. I just think I watched all the carries last game against Ole Miss. Oscar Adaway outcarried Sanders 9-8. The previous game, Sanders only had one rush, against Akron. That was for 1 yard, and then he didn't go out, missed a game. Now here he is, still banged up, listed as probable coming into this game. But if I'm going to go by what I saw simply 7 days ago against Mississippi, he carried the ball 8 times for 29 yards and looked completely ineffective. There was no turning radius on Raheem Sanders from anything I saw. It was basically just running in the back of his blockers. If we're going to see that Raheem Sanders in a game where there's going to be an unfavorable game script I don't see how this is happening given his current state of health, given the split backfield. You want him to get to 45.5? I say no. And I also advise an under on his 1.5 receptions. He's caught one ball or less in every single one of his 5 games this year, and he's banged up. All right, show me 2 receptions on that too. So those are the 2 plays I like in this game.
I like the side I'm going to stay away from. I am showing value on South Carolina, but it's tough to take it in this spot. My line's around 16.5, 17. It's tough to take it in this spot, especially when we've seen South Carolina's offense in some of these games. To your point, Froton, they have a tough time returning fire. Their pass game is not good at all, and Rocket Sanders hasn't looked good in recent weeks. My prop for this game, it's a little bit sneaky off the beaten path, but Alabama's passing offense, we all know you don't need the advanced metrics. What do they do? What is Jalen Milroe's game? Likes to fling the ball downfield, right? You have to defend the run, and then he's got the rocket, speaking of that, arm downfield. The Alabama passing offense, number 5 in passing explosion, number 5 in yards per successful dropback. The South Carolina pass defense, they have the really good pass rush. They'll send heat after you, and they can hinder your efficiency because they get after the timing. What does it leave them susceptible to? Explosive passes. South Carolina's pass defense, they are 106th in marginal explosiveness, 91st in yards per successful dropback. Jalen Milroe's prop, the longest completion, 43.5. I'm going over that. I think Alabama hits multiple explosive downfield passes in this game. And I think you're trying to with Milroe too, right? Like the Vanderbilt game is an example of one going forward. You're going to be in situations you have to throw. I think they let him air this thing out a little bit as opposed to let him run around when you're already facing those freak edge rushers that South Carolina has, as opposed to getting Milroe battered. Let's test the weakness of that defense and just poke at it all game long. Going over on that. I would go over 49.5. I go over 50.5. Jalen Milroe is going to have a long completion in this game. So that's my play for that one. The next one, now moving to 3:30 Eastern, we have the Red River rivalry. We'll call it the shootout here amongst friends. Texas and Oklahoma. The line on this game live in the market right now has moved up this morning to 15.5 for Texas. It had come down to 14.5, Texas by 14.5, but now we're back up to 15.5. Tells you that as the limits get bigger, moving up towards game day, the day before, and then the morning of kickoff, those limits increase. There's some big money coming in on Texas as we speak here in the market right now. Gene, with that line moving to 15.5, who do you like in this one?
Whew. I mean, it's a rivalry game, right? Rivalry games, you normally can just throw everything out. But here's the problem for me. Oklahoma's offense has just been all year. Like defense, top, still one of the top tier defenses now because they're defensive oriented. And again, I don't understand why defensive coordinators don't go out and get these offensive minds and then get out the way. But for some reason, a lot of defensive coordinators get head coaching jobs, and then the offense suffers because their thought process is, well, just don't mess it up and our defense will take care of it. The problem is that Texas's defense is really, really good. And they're, I believe, second in scoring defense right now. And the problem when you put a really good scoring defense with a really good scoring offense versus an offense that doesn't score well, eventually all it takes is one score, maybe two, to start to put the noose on. And as it gets tighter and tighter, that lead gets further and further away. I think this is a game where Texas comes out, they strike early, Oklahoma plays catch up for the next quarter and a half, 2 quarters, but they can't, and then it becomes quicksand. It just gets worse and worse and worse, and all of a sudden Texas is up by 21 and 24 points. I like the Longhorns to go ahead and hook them good.
Froton, to Gene's point about the defense, Texas' defense, it's been interesting to watch this year where last year you couldn't run on them at all, but you could throw on them, which is why their first round playoff matchup against Washington was actually a bad one for Texas because Washington could just exploit that weakness and avoid that run defense. I've always thought it would have been interesting if Texas had played Michigan. I think last year's Texas team was like the worst matchup for Michigan because of those 2 interior studs that Texas had. But now those guys are in the NFL in Murphy and Sweat. And Texas, they appear to have greatly improved their pass defense over the offseason. Some of the advanced metrics early, now it's small sample. Texas' strength of schedule hasn't been the best to this point, but the run defense appears to be a bit down from what it was last year. How does this inform with your handicap? And then on the other side with Oklahoma's defense having played better, but obviously Oklahoma's offense is the issue there. That's why they benched Jackson Arnold, gone to the Hawkins kid. Do you have any props and how are you sort of seeing that matchup?
Yeah, as you mentioned with Texas, their pass defense isn't just good. It's one of the absolute best in the country. Yeah. Elite. 28% success rate allowed. 28%. It means 72% of their plays are not successful. And then you look at EPA per dropback. First in the entire country, EPA per dropback allowed. What more do you want out of Texas? And on the other side, as you mentioned, losing Byron Young, losing Devondre Sweat, their rush defense has taken a hit. If you look at their opportunity rate, 94th, 60th in rushing success rate, which still isn't terrible, but it's not the absolute lockdown, forget about it sort of, run defense we saw from them last year. Now on the other side with Oklahoma, there's one thing that on either side of the ball that this team actually does at a above average level, and that's defend the run. They rank 8th in rushing success rate, 12th in EPA per rush. But if you go over to the passing side, like they're brutal, 118th in passing success rate allowed. And if you look at what they do offensively, 116th, in passing success rate. They rank 129th in completions of 20 plus yards. That's literally 6th worst in the country. I have 2 props that I like here along those lines. One, speaking to Oklahoma's lack of efficiency on the offensive side of the ball, I'm going under 27.5 pass attempts for their quarterback, Michael Hawkins. We've seen Oklahoma quarterbacks be put out to pasture in these Red River games before, okay? Ask Spencer Rattler what happened. I think with Michael Hawkins being a true freshman, being more of a dual threat, only threw 15 passes last game because they didn't feel comfortable putting him in harm's way against arguably, a top 5 pass defense. They're going to go and have Michael Hawkins putting the ball in the air 28 times. I don't care how far they are down. They can't afford to do that against this defense. I just simply don't see that being the script. Even if they're down, I don't think they can risk it. And even if they're down big, maybe we see Jackson Arnold come in again, which further shortens this game. So I like that. And then this is kind of a bold one on my part. Jaden Blue, running back for Texas, opened up at 63.5. Yesterday, was at that all week. Yesterday gets steamed up to 81.5. Apparently Chris K, I've heard Chris K is to blame. But thank you, Mr. K. If you were going to steam this up to 81.5, I'm going the other side. Jaden Blue last game, 6 carries, 2 fumbles. After his second fumble in the mid-third quarter, he didn't see the field again. Trey Wisner went out and got 13 carries, and I watched every single one of them for both of these backs over the last 2 games. Trey Wisner looks better than Jaden Blue right now, period. Somehow they're going to give 81.5 after he just got benched against Mississippi State, and now they're in the Red River, and you're going to expect Steve Sarkisian to just say, oh, yeah, don't worry about Jaden. Those 2 fumbles, they're fine. He's crossed his 81.5 one time in 5 games. That was against Louisiana Monroe. I'm going with the recent trend, which is Trey Wisner getting another 15 carries. I'm seeing 16.5 carries on Jaden Blue. I'm seeing 81.5 yards down to 79. I'm going under on both of those. Bold call.
That is shocking line movement on Blue.
Yeah. And late in the game, it was a Friday evening move.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about that one during the week when it was in the mid 60s. I like the under at that number. I'm seeing it's 78.5 at underdog and right over the 80 at some of the other ones. I don't know about that. You have a lot of different paths to the under there. Game script could get you there in a game where the favorite, the team he's on, is favored by more than 2 touchdowns. You get into the second half there. Recall, Texas already lost 2 running backs before the season started for the season. So they've been low on running back depth the whole time. Even if he's playing well, are you going to run him into the ground in the second half in this game if you have a 2 touchdown plus lead? But then on the other hand, we've seen the quick trigger finger that Sarkisian has with him. Great example from last week. It's not the first time this season that has happened. And then you have the qualitative play as well. Will they mix other guys in as well? And then the strength of the Oklahoma defense. They're really, really good against the run, where Oklahoma is susceptible. So Oklahoma, their run defense, 8th in success rate, number 9 in yards per successful rush. I could go on and on. EPA per rush, 12. The decided weakness of that Oklahoma defense is the pass defense, 78th in success rate and 118th in marginal explosiveness. Just put yourself in the shoes of the Texas coaching staff. You're looking at the analytical profile of this Oklahoma defense. You're watching the tape this week. What are you going to do with your game plan to attack that thing? You're going through the air, right? And you're going to get aggressive and try to catch Venable, some of those replacer blitzes, and catch them downfield on those things. That's what I would do. I love the undercall on Blue. And Froton, you were on the over on Bond, right? I didn't catch if you had said that one.
Yeah. I was on the over on Bond.
On.
Yeah, I had done that in my early show on NBC. I took him at 57.5. I believe it's 63.5 right now. I still think it's good at that number, depending on how crazy it gets steamed up. But I don't see why they wouldn't be throwing the ball early and often against Oklahoma and just get up there, establish, what they're trying to do, and exploit that 118th passing explosiveness allowed defense. That's where you can get Oklahoma, and I think that's where they go.
And one other prop follow-up question, one that I was sniffing around is, you mentioned Hawkins. I don't think they'll pull the hook on him, because I think it's just over between Arnold. But the question that I have about his game, and now we flip it to the other side. Your Oklahoma staff, how can you manufacture yards against this Texas defense that has fallen off just a bit with their run defense, but you don't have great running back talent if you're Oklahoma? The thing that Hawkins has added to that offense, it's that scrambling ability. Yes. He set it a reasonable in the mid-20s or so with his rushing yards. What do you think about that one? That one sort of interests me, going the over on the Hawkins rushing yards.
As always with college, you have to remember sacks. Sacks count as negative rushing yards. In the NFL, sacks do not count against QB rushing yards. So that's really the issue I have here. It's just how many sacks is he going to take? But at the same time, as we alluded to, what's their alternative other than running, the RPO QB stuff? I think they have to. They do have Taylor Tatum, the number 1 running back recruit in the country, back today, from what I understand. So I do think we'll see less of Javonte Barnes, who's up there at 45.5 in that ballpark right now. I think you could take speculative underplay on him too.
Moving on to our next game here on the docket, we have another 3:30 Eastern kick here. And for folks out there in the audience, please type your questions. Right after this game, we're going to open the mailbag for the first time, so appreciate everyone for tuning in. Penn State traveling, Froton, to your neck of the woods at USC here. This line has had some interesting movement. I bet I don't usually find myself on the wrong end of line movement. I bet this thing at 4.5 on Sunday, and it got up to 5.5 as of Monday. Then it was back at 4.5 later in the week. It has now come down. I think this was yesterday when this toggled down to 3.5. So it appears that we have some late money on USC here. Gene, as I'm sort of alluding to, I don't agree with that late line movement, but I'm curious how you see this game today in Los Angeles.
I don't agree with it at all as well. I mean, who who just beat USC and how did they beat them? Right?
Exactly.
It's not just that you lost to Minnesota, it's the way that you lost to Minnesota. Minnesota grinded you out, ground pepper style, no ability to throw the ball at all. Zero ability to throw the ball at all, and you got beat by a team that was one-dimensional that you saw coming, and they just played smash mouth, grinded out offense, and you weren't able to generate enough offense with the offensive wonderkin, out there calling plays. That says a lot to me. Now you bring in a better defense in Penn State and a much better offense that has the ability to grind you out the exact same way, and they can throw the ball. And they have one of those guys that are college, and now we're seeing professional X factors in a tight end who I think might be low-key one of the best players in the nation that nobody talks about, right? So I look at this game and I go, I don't understand the line movement for USC. I think this, to me, is a free pick. If you're out there, take Penn State. They're going to get this thing done, and Penn State doesn't blow anybody out like that. Like, that's not really their MO. But they don't have to, because the line's not large anyway. Like, I'm more than comfortable giving 3.5. I'm more than comfortable giving 4. If it got up to 5.5, I'd still be comfortable giving it, because I think they're going to beat them by a touchdown or more. It's Penn State for me in this game. I don't even understand why people think USC has a shot in this game.
Froton, this is your hometown team here with the USC Trojans. They've been a interesting team to prop handicap against, because they have lopsided offense, they have a lopsided defense. How do you see this one, the side of it, and then do you have any props on this game?
Yeah, I will be in attendance for this game, of course. Penn State, USC. I ain't missing that one in my backyard. But that being said, as Gene alluded to, how is USC losing these games? And I guess I'll be, much to the delight of our producer, Paul, giving you a little bit of a singing, because it reminds me of Steve Winwood here. It's in the way that you lose it. So how did they lose these games? Look at Michigan, 27-24. Michigan was able to exert themselves, their will upon them in the trenches, and then walk over to another one of Thor's favorite teams, his hometown, Minnesota Gophers. They scored 17 points against a middle-of-the-road Big Ten team like Minnesota. This isn't Penn State. This isn't Michigan. This is Minnesota, no offense. They march in there, and with a 19% win expectancy, get beat 24-17. That's a problem, because what are they doing? They're getting beat up on the ground. Darius Taylor able to exert his will, as well as Marcus Major. Nice overcash there. But USC defensively, 127th in yards per successful rush. I'm sorry, the 109th in stuff rate. Are they going to be able to bow up to Penn State on the line where they have Nick Singleton coming back and you got Katron Allen? I think you see a lot of the run game out of them. I am on Penn State as well. I got it at 4. It's down to 3.5. Fine, I'll eat that hook. But I just think with the profile of these two teams, with Penn State wanting to impose their will and maul USC on the line, as Michigan and Minnesota did before them, I think it's a recipe for success. Give me Penn State.
Yeah, I like Penn State as well. And you guys hit the major points on this one, but Penn State's just a better version of Minnesota. And Minnesota was a really bad matchup for USC, because Minnesota could play pass defense, and then they can keep the ball on the ground and control the clock. To the point of Penn State's now moving to Penn State, their ability to run the ball. Last week, Penn State beat USC's crosstown rival UCLA 27-11. That was without Nicholas Singleton, who the coaching staff said that day could have played. He was practicing late in the week. He went through pregame warmups. They decided to, as James Franklin said after the game, withhold him to get him healthy for this game, even though he could have played. You get Singleton back, pairing him up with Katron Allen. That run game obviously gets better after it was down. The first 4 games, Singleton averaged 102 yards per game, 7.7 yards per carry. He's one of the best backs in the entire nation. The Trojans, you can eat them alive if you can run the ball. USC ranks 105th in yards per carry allowed. They're also 105th in the nation in yards per carry before contact. Penn State's going to destroy them on the line of scrimmage. They're going to assert their will. They're going to do whatever they want there. And then Drew Allar is quietly having a fabulous season. He hasn't had to do the volume yet. They haven't needed him to. So the counting stats are a bit down, or well, above where they've been in the past, but for him. But the efficiency numbers have been crazy for him in this game. I think Allar, whenever they need him, is going to do really well. USC defense has gotten a little bit better, but you still have problems there, especially when you can just control the line of scrimmage. Penn State's pass rush is what I'm concerned about for USC flipping the field. Penn State, number 8 in pressure rate, number 20 in sacks per dropback. Miller Moss, he is shown to not be as good under duress. The defenses that can affect his timing, you can really hinder that USC offense, and they want to be led by the foot of their passing game. And so if you can do anything to hinder that, they start to have problems. Trojans rank 116th in the nation. The Trojans offense, 116th in blown block percentage. And this is where it gets really troubling for them. 129th in pressure rate allowed for USC. Miller Moss is not some crazy dual threat, fleet of foot, make you miss, break a tackle, back there in the pocket, and then extend the play kind of a guy. This is a big mismatch of that Penn State, the nasty defensive front against a USC offensive line that has been leaky. Don't love Miller Moss as far as like a singular talent. He needs the stuff around him to be going well. I think that line is going to disintegrate in front of him in this one, and Woody Marks is not going to have as easy of a time getting ground yards to bail out that offense in this game, like we've seen in some of the other ones. So I definitely I'm definitely on Penn State with where that line has gone. My line in this game, by the way, is Penn State -6.5. I realize too that they are coming. The team's traveling west. That is an angle. Right. I mean, it's one of the primary reasons I was on Cal last week when Miami was going west across the thing, whatever. I don't know. This is not as bad of a spot, though. We're not playing this one at midnight Eastern time. And I think that Penn State's going to be ready for this one. As James Franklin attempts to break through and get his team to the 12-team playoff. We're going to open the mailbox now. Thanks, everyone, again for tuning in. Let's hop into the mailbag for the first time today and see what we got going on here. Our friend Mike Huseman asks us, Miami of Ohio is -2.5 on the road at Eastern Michigan today. Who do you guys like in this action battle? I can lead this one off. I am on the underdog in this game, Eastern Michigan. I got it early. I'm clutching up because I'm trying to see the number. I got it at 3.5 earlier this week. Not a surprise to me that this has come now down to the 3. Then now we're down to the 2.5. My line on that game was actually Eastern Michigan -1.5. You could have gotten the 3.5 on Sunday. So I definitely feel that the wrong team is favored here. And I feel like it has to do with who these teams have been in recent years. But Miami of Ohio is not that team anymore. Miami of Ohio started 1-4. Only team they've beaten is UMass. They beat UMass 23-20. And last week we saw Miami get handled by Toledo 30-20. EMU on the other side. And by the way, EMU comes off a bye. They've started 4-1. They beat Jacksonville State, a team that's probably going to be making a bowl. And they played the same UMass Minutemen. And Froton, I'm sorry to keep being derogatory towards your boys down there in Amherst, but the EMU won that game by 2 touchdowns. The interesting part of this handicap is Miami. I don't know if people think of them this way, but they throw more than any team on the early rundowns in the nation. But it's all the quick hitting stuff, right? So it's just, you get the snap and then you're throwing to the running back. You're doing the screens on the outside. Brett Gabbert has not been good though this year. 5-7 TDI-INT ratio, 55.1% completions, and the turnovers and the negative plays have just destroyed this offense because they can't run. So it just has to be that really quick. What's coming. It's that quick hitting passing every time. Gabbert has an eye-bleeding 31.3% pressure to sack rate. The issue here, so you look at the EMU's pass defense, the pass defensive metrics aren't good. So on the treetops, you might be like, oh, this could be a game where Gabbert could get right. EMU's pass defense is 111th in success rate. But the issue is EMU, what they do, they get after the quarterback. They send their blitz rate is super duper high and they get home. So EMU, number 5 in the nation in pressure rate, number 11 in sacks per dropback. And then that blitz rate is number 7. They're going to get after Gabbert right away. And Gabbert is showing to be really bad under pressure. They don't have another recourse on offense. And then Miami's run defense is way, way down. Eastern Michigan leans way heavy towards the run. I think they're just going to be able to grind that thing out. I like Eastern Michigan in this one outright. Did you guys have any thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I do. And what I wanted to get to with Eastern Michigan as well, and I do favor them, very, very smart with the ball. So they don't turn the ball over one all season, one turnover all year long. And then on the other side, they create turnovers. They rank 11th in expected turnovers and 7th in turnover ratio with a +7. As you mentioned, Miami, Ohio has been careless with the ball, right? So Eastern Michigan, excellent against the run. It's bad news for Keon Mosey and company. And they turn the ball over at disproportionate rates where you're dealing with an offense from Miami, Ohio that has been absolutely sputtering on both sides of the ball. I mean, I really like Eastern Michigan in this one.
Yeah, I agree, Thor. Real quick, I'll just say this on what I like. I think the reason that the line, and this is something that people should always look at, the reason that the line seems to lean towards Miami of Ohio in this is because of the strength of schedule. They've played a bunch of FBS, like more what people would consider to be higher end FBS schools. And so because of that, I think a lot of people think, oh, well, when they start playing teams that are supposed to be around their level, they're going to be better. Yeah, in theory that works, but when the other team just is a more well-oiled, disciplined team that can win in a bunch of different ways, I think that changes the dynamic. That's why I like Eastern Michigan today.
Yeah, totally agree, and a good matchup there. Arstu's asks us, good morning, fellas. Good morning, Arstu's. So you guys like a particular side in the Wazoo Fresno State game, money line wise? As always, appreciate it. You guys have any plays in the Washington State against Fresno State game today?
I don't have any props in that game because, as you might imagine, with Fresno State getting eviscerated by UNLV their last game, it's like I don't feel like the market even knows really what to do with this game in the prop respect. And then with Washington State losing very little from their team after being jettisoned from the Pac-12 down to the Mountain West, unlike Oregon State, everybody basically stayed. John Mateer is the #1 college fantasy football quarterback in the country. And with Fresno State getting 50 plus hung on them by UNLV 2 weeks ago, I just have a hard time thinking, how are they going to stop Washington State and Mateer and Kyle Williams? I just don't see it happening. Best of luck, to Fresno, but I don't think they can stop Wazoo.
Yeah, so that line right now in the market, mostly 3.5 at the books. My line on that one's Washington State about -1.5. I'm not touching that game though. You brought up some of the factors as to why, and in the props as well. Yeah, there was nothing in that particular one that interests me. So that's a stay away from me. Colby Vercotteren asks us, thank you for all that you do. Appreciate you, Colby. And he said, any thoughts on ENU and my man Chris Creighton +2.5? Just talked about that one.
Everybody's talking about it. Everybody wants to talk about EMU today.
We love the Silver Fox, Chris Creighton, one of the most underrated coaches in all the country, and has been.
Yeah, you try to recruit out of Ypsilanti. See how you like it.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. We got Brody Mullet asks, you guys like Toledo to cover -9.5 at Buffalo? Toledo is still the Kings there in the MAC. I guess they had the 1 year slight off not winning the thing, but Toledo's been great. I've criticized Jason Candle in the past for his coaching. He's doing a really, really good job this year. He's obviously done a good job of fending teams off in the portal mostly. I mean, Finn, I don't know if they cared that they lost him. Penny Boone ain't playing a lot for UCF, but Toledo does a really good job in the high school recruiting as well. Did you guys have any thoughts on the other MAC game? Gene, do you have anything in that one, Toledo and Buffalo?
Yeah, it's just been weird to watch Buffalo, take NIU to overtime and get the big win versus what I thought was the best team, in the conference, and then go out and lay a complete egg versus UConn. Like the Fighting Huskies are trying to stay relevant, over there in Connecticut. Toledo is a team that seems to have their stuff together. It's Maction time. They tend to show up. Big win early on versus Mississippi State, but that Mississippi State team's just not very good at all. I think I would lean towards Toledo. 9.5 is down from where it was. I think at one point it was up to 10.5, if I'm not mistaken, Thor. So 9.5 is down, which means that some people like Buffalo to make a bounce back. But I think that when you get beat by teams like they got beat last week, that has a tendency to linger when you're not a great team. And so I'll take the much better team in here. I'll lay those 9.5 with Toledo, and I'll hold my nose a little bit.
Yeah, my line in this one is Toledo minus 7.7, but you're still sort of in the dead zone there. So yeah, I mean, but beneath 10 could go either way. Like that, it's one that I'm staying off of, mostly because Gene mentioned it. It's just tough to get your finger on Buffalo. Yeah. I feel like I know what I'm going to get on Toledo, but those teams that show up some weeks, they don't show up some weeks. Like, and the Mac's got a couple of them. NIU, the aforementioned NIU, is another example of this. That's going to make Maction wild. I feel like we're going to get some big outright upsets once Maction starts next month. But yeah, this game, because of those factors up in the air, I got to avoid that one. Paul B asks thoughts on Kobe Pace over 55.5 rushing. I actually have thoughts on that one. I bet the under on Kobe Pace earlier this week because of the constitution of the defense that they're facing and a good run defense. Froton, did you play anything on with the Virginia game? And in particular to the question with Kobe Pace in the mid-50s there with his rushing. Froton, you might be on mute. Froton?
And I'm not on mute anymore. Sorry about that. Kobe Pace, yes, I played him earlier in the week, 57.5. He's since gone down to 55.5. You got to remember with Mr. Pace, we don't know what we've been really getting in that backfield. It's been, some of him, and then there's been a little bit of Xavier Brown as well, who had popped a couple of 100-yard games, at least one in particular. With Pace, he's kind of more geared towards the passing downs. And with, obviously he's coming off a good game where he was in that, I believe, the 80-yard range. But keep in mind, this is UVA. And they were playing Boston College last game. They won 24-14. Everything went in their way in terms of script, everything along those lines. But now they're playing Louisville, okay? And if you notice Louisville's defense and what they've done over the course of this year, they have not allowed any runner so far in 5 games to clear the 55-yard barrier. And that includes Jeremiah Love last game for Notre Dame, who all they want to do is run the ball because they can't throw the ball with Riley Leonard. It didn't matter, and they beat Notre Dame. Now you're going to have Kobe Pace coming in. Kobe Pace is going to be the first one. He's going to be the first one to go over 55 yards against Louisville's defense that ranks 9th in EPA per rush, 12th in rushing success rate. No. They're going to be throwing the ball with Anthony Calandria and Malachi Fields against them because Louisville ranks 115th in passing success rate, 122nd in completion rate, 125th in QBR allowed. It just doesn't make sense schematically, right? If you're Virginia to say, all right, Kobe Pace, we're going to ride you hard and put you away wet today. It's not happening. It'll be a split backfield. You're not going to see the same kind of penetration you did against the beleaguered BC team that gave up almost 100 yards to Elijah Young for Western Kentucky. Forget it. Under Kobe Pace.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. And the exact way that you're seeing that, because Louisville has one of those lopsided defenses, and this is what we love. And in the prop market, these are the fun defenses to get after in the handicapping, because the markets, they're more looking at how much is that player average in the games, leading up to that. You might look a little bit at the defensive strength, but after that, I'm talking about the sports books. Then the market, they're not looking into the on-field matchups as deep as we are. So you can pick out some of these discrepancies. And like Froton was mentioning, Louisville, they have the elite run defense, but you can throw all day on them. So that one, it's another classic over Calandria and under on Kobe Pace. Totally agree with that. Boys, we're going to move on to our second slate. We got to go quicker on this one so we can get Bainbridge up here. I know we got a lot of people in the audience want to hear the DFS talk and then some more player props there at the end. We're going to move to Florida and Tennessee this evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. This line, I got this one at 15.5 on Sunday. Or 15. Yeah, I think 15.5. It's down to 14.5 live. So Tennessee laying 14.5 today in Knoxville. Gene, who do you like in this one?
Tennessee surprised me last week with their play versus Arkansas. Inconsistency in the passing game. That was not what I was expecting to see versus Arkansas. A little concerned, but not total concern. They're back at home. They should be comfortable. Florida, I still don't know who Florida is. I don't I do know this. They're like 75th in scoring defense. Like versus a team that can score. Having a bad scoring defense is a bad sign. I'll take Tennessee. I'll lay the 14.5. Florida's going to have to show me that they can be better versus elite competition. I think Tennessee is elite competition.
Froton, we have some maybe not quite as lopsided, but we do have staggered defenses here and offenses that like to do certain things. Opens up some prop opportunities. You like any props in this game?
Yeah, I do. I like Montrell Johnson. This is how we do it. Under 58.5 receiving yards. I know Gene is with me on that. We all love Montrell Jordan, legend. But Montrell Johnson, on the other hand, look, Texas A&M, he ran the ball 7 times for -7 yards. Following week after that, he goes 15 for 68 against a pathetic Mississippi State. UCF last week, they win 24-13. He gets 10 carries for 54 yards. I'm sorry. Now you're going up against Tennessee, who is an even better rush defense than Texas A&M was. First in rushing success rate, first in yards per rush, first in EPA per rush, first in yards per carry before contact. It's almost laughable how good Tennessee is. And we saw it last week. We talked about it. We talked about Arkansas. I gave out Jaquindon Jackson under 75.5 rushing yards, and it came home because that's not what you're going to do against Tennessee if you want to be successful. Montrell Johnson splitting with Jaden Baugh, 10 carries last game against UCF. Now you're going up against Tennessee's defense. I just don't see a path for this over. Give me the under Montrell Johnson, and I'll tell you with Tennessee as well, their offense has just not been the Hendon Hooker offense, the Josh Heupel UCF offense that we've been accustomed to. They've been good, but you're not out there blowing the doors off of teams like they used to, especially not against Alabama and Georgia. They got Alabama and Georgia coming up, especially against Arkansas. They went and lost against Arkansas. So a lot coming in here, playing against, Florida that is kind of, morose when it comes to their whole game plan. I'm taking the under, Nico, passing yardage. I think he's up there around 240, and I just think they attack this team on the ground.
Yeah, I was going to ask you too about Badger. Badger, we just slightly missed on last week. He's at right now 44.5. Seems like a decent price. The Florida quarterback situation is hard to parse because they're bringing legway sometimes. But Badger at 44.5. Would you go over on that one, Froton? You with me on that one?
He is the deep threat. We don't have any Trey Wilson, which that's kind of the same role that he plays in the offense as he does. I think they're going to have to throw the ball. So I would lean over on our boy Badger, our favorite Breaking Bad character. Everybody loved Badger.
Sure.
Yeah. That being said, it's not an official play for me, but it's a lean over 44.5.
Yeah, I like Badger there. Gators offense, number 10 SP plus and number 5 SP plus special teams. Defenses let Florida down so far, but I think they're a little bit better than the market thinks. The market just saw them get flogged by that Miami team in the opener. Doesn't look like such a bad loss at this point. And then Tennessee has been a little bit disappointing, and you can throw on Tennessee. Froton was bringing up the reasons why you can't run on them. You can throw on them, and Florida's passing offense has been surprisingly good this year. So that I like Florida in this game. I took the points. I mentioned 14.5. My system's line in this game is Tennessee minus 11.5. So I think there's line value on Florida, and then we're attacking the props like that. And by the way, for anyone out there, you hear me tossing out my lines and the projections. We have different win projections. That's all on the site at FantasyLife, FantasyLife Plus. Code Thor20 gets you 20% off that, but it's at the tier 2 subscription. So if anyone wants to check that out, they all come back out on Monday, all the fresh numbers, all my fresh win projection for every team, etc. Boys, moving to the big game of the day, one of the big games of the season. This one, 7:30 Eastern kickoff this evening. Ohio State traveling to Eugene, Oregon. We had a line in this one. The Ducks were getting 3.5 earlier this week. That thing has come down to 3 late in the week. Gene, who do you like in the game of the week?
To me, this is going to be fun because we're going to really find out who this Oregon team is, right? And we're going to find out more about Ohio State. Who's legit, who has a chance to I think this game will tell us who has a chance to possibly be national champions. I think Ohio State, if they employ their weapons, Chip Kelly getting an opportunity to go back kind of under the radar at Oregon, I think it'll be fun to watch. And ultimately, I think that's why Ohio State will come out in the win. I think it'll be a difference in the ability to get explosive plays that Ohio State has versus what Oregon's going to be able to do, where I feel like Oregon's more like their quarterback just has that moxie because he's been in college football for 8 billion years. But at the end of the day, those explosive elements from Ohio State are going to get it done. I'll lay those points on the road with Ohio State.
What about you, Froton? Who do you like in this one? You got any props?
I'm concerned about Oregon and their currently just their philosophy passing wise, averaging 6.3 air yards per target. That's 128th in the country. As you might expect, because of that, they rank 114th in completions of 20 plus yards. This just isn't the Oregon offense that Bo Nix was running. That's ultra efficient, never gets sacked, is always making a quick, efficient decision. Gabriel cannot stretch the field like that Troy Franklin Bo Nix combo we saw of, yesteryear. And then when it comes to Oregon's defense, they're getting beat up pretty good on the ground. 87th in yards per successful rush, 99th in EPA per rush. And you're going to go up against a Chip Kelly, fully formed Death Star Ohio State team that is absolutely irate about how they performed against Michigan the past few years. And now they're loaded to bear with, $2 million Quinshon Judkins in the backfield now. I just think this is too much. I understand I'm backing 2 road favorites, at that field goal, but man, I'm just having a hard time seeing a path for Oregon. I don't think they can penetrate Ohio State's defense. I think they're going to have a hard time running the ball. It's just everything tells me that this Oregon team has not been as good as the Oregon team of 2023.
Yeah, they definitely haven't. It's going to have to coalesce for them quick, obviously, to come out victorious in this game. But to your point about the travel, and this being another one in the Big Ten today where a team is coming back 2+ time zones to play on a road game here. Our friend Mike Huseman had pointed out that teams traveling 2+ time zones for a conference game this year are 1-9 against the spread. I already went with Penn State, a team that is in that scenario. I don't have an official play on this game, but just to even things out on my side, I think I'm going to lean towards Oregon, just being the home team. But everything that you guys said, I don't disagree with. Oregon is going to have to play better than they have so far this year. So you have to make a bit of the logical leap of we're going to see the best game from Oregon to get there. But that would be my lean as long as that line is 3, or if it gets back above. The next game we got here on the docket, another night one, the last one we're going to talk about, and then we'll get into Gene's FCS play at the game. We'll bring up Bainbridge, talk about props. We're going to open up the mailbag again. LSU hosting Ole Miss today. We have a line on this one of, I believe, 3.5 right now. Ole Miss laying 3.5 on the road. Gene, who do you like in this one?
I like the over.
And we got a total low 60s, right? Of this
yeah, 60, low 60s. I think that this game has overwritten all over it. We've seen this LSU defense. Is it better than it was? Is it better than it was in the past? Maybe, right? Maybe it's a little bit better, but it's still susceptible to a lot of points being put on it. I think Ole Miss will be prime and ready. I think LSU's offense has performed well. Nussmeier still doing his thing. Maybe not as great as I thought he would be in this offense, but has really performed well and thrown some really fantastic football. If you want to get into like the actual, like him playing a position, he's thrown some really fantastic balls. But I just think in the end, this ends up being a shootout, and shootouts to me, I don't really fade one side or another. I just root for scoring. I just root for scoring and chaos, and 61.5 points is something I feel comfortable with. This is a 35-38er waiting to happen.
Chaos and points sounds like a good prop handicap game. Froton, do you have any plays on this one?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to like the over, but, there's some data points that kind of give us a little caution. That game against Kentucky being one for Ole Miss, 17-20, not the greatest. And then South Carolina and their just completely inept offense, 27-3. So it's not like Ole Miss has given up a ton of points. In fact, it's been quite the opposite. But they did give up 20 to a pretty humdrum, shall we say, Kentucky team. Now, with LSU, we know what they want to do here, and they want to be able to score with you. They want to turn this game into a track meet, because I can't see that defense minus Harold Perkins really being too much of an impediment for Ole Miss. Now, with the stuff I like, I have a best bet that is in this game, which I will save till the end of the show. But I also like Garrett Nussmeier, our boy Nuss. I know that Thor is on the other side of this. I understand Ole Miss's defense has been very good. First in success rate, fifth in EPA per play. But they haven't played an offense that's as good as LSU's. And LSU, I predict, will be giving up points. They're going to allow Ole Miss to score, and they're going to have to keep pace. With that, sort of a game script, I think you're going to see old Nussmeier go over his 290.5 passing yardage mark. I think he's even steamed up to 295.
I don't disagree with you on Nuss. I agree with everything both of you were saying. I think we're going to get a wild shootout here. This is a tough one. As far as the handicap, what you've seen with your eyes, you would definitely lean towards Ole Miss. But some of the analytics and such like that, and the historical trends, you might go towards LSU. Brett McMurphy of the Action Network, this was yesterday, I think, tweeted that LSU off a bye, which they are here, is in Brian Kelly's coaching career, 15-2 straight up, and 12-5 against the spread, playing at home as he is here on extended rest. Kelly is really good in this spot. And there's some coaches where you get the extra week, or in bowl season, you have the extra prep time. They are able to carve you up schematically. It's another data point for Nussmeier. But I do think it's a wild shooter. LSU still has the issues with defense. You mentioned that the loss of Perkins. They've gotten better against the run this year, but they were one of the worst in the nation last year. So it's damning by faint praise. Yeah. And their pass defense is still atrocious. And Ole Miss, if you can do things on offense, your boy Lenoris Peter Sellers can. You can move the ball on Ole Miss. This game, this is going to be back and forth. We're going to get a shootout, and we'll see if Brian Kelly, he can continue to improve his success in that spot coming off the bye. Gene, let's do your FCS play, and then we'll hop back into the mailbag.
Yeah, so really excited because now we're getting hot and heavy into conference play now. And the FCS is shaping out to figure out who's going to make the run for the playoffs, and then what's that going to look like. I'm going to just tell you, gentlemen, the Dakotas is where you should be putting your money at. There's a gold rush in the Dakotas, and I am all for the gold rush. I got a special one today. I got a 3-team parlay.
Oh,
I got a 3-team parlay. I'm calling it the Dakotas Gold Rush. Wow. North Dakota State minus 17.5 today. They're the only team playing on the road. But they're North Dakota State, and quiet as it's kept, they have a quarterback who's playing the best football he's played in his entire career, and he's like 157 years old. Cam Miller has been at North Dakota State forever, and he's won championships, and he's playing the best football of his career. I think that one is easy for me when they're playing Southern Illinois. I'll tell you why when I get to these other play. We've got, and it should be South Dakota, who is laying 19.5 to Northern Iowa. Northern Iowa put up a little bit of a fight versus some decent teams, and then they got into teams that are like the upper echelon of the FCS, and they laid down. South Dakota is a team that very, very similar to South Dakota State a few years ago. They're trying to make that next step, and they were close last year. They made a nice playoff run last year. They've hit the ground running this year. I think South Dakota, who really beat the pants off of Southern Illinois earlier this year, who now have to deal with North Dakota, they're going to get the job done versus Northern Iowa. The big one, and the one that I'm going to really just kind of clutch my pearls on why I do it, because it's a big line. South Dakota State minus 32.5 versus Youngstown State. We've seen Youngstown State be competitive versus other teams, but they're not competitive versus the Dakotas. Not the big Dakotas, and definitely not the state Dakotas. South Dakota State will blow out Youngstown State for the triple FCS Player of the Week.
Love it. Let's hop back into the mailbag. Let's see. We got find my place in our mailbag. DeMonte Dixon asks us, got any thoughts on Colorado State against Colorado? I do. I love this as a prop game. I'll let Froton talk about his angle on Avery Johnson, which is different than mine. I like the over on Avery Johnson's rushing. I'll let Froton talk about the other aspect of it because we talked about this handicap earlier this week. But Colorado's defense, which is better, by the way, has gotten better this year. They
not
have
as
struggled,
bad as it used to be. Absolutely.
Not nearly as bad as it used to be. They have struggled against the quarterbacks that can break containment and giving up chunks of yards that way. Avery Johnson, that's all he does. He's a dual threat quarterback that only has one threat. That's his legs. That will be leveraged in this game to get yards. So I like the over on him. My other one in this one, I'm going to be saving for my play of the day in a little bit. But the other aspect on the other side with Colorado's passing game, I'm going over on Wester in this game. Wester was banged up. LaJohntay Wester was banged up earlier this season, and he was coming over via transfer. They're trying to figure out how to get him into their offensive system. He's gotten back to fully healthy. That kid's a speedster and an athlete. Kansas State, you look at the treetop analytical profile of their defense, the pass defense, they're okay as far as efficiency against the pass. They are horrific in terms of allowing explosive passing plays. And that's why you see, like, basically Kansas State either force you into a 3-and-out or you hit they either strike you out or you hit a dinger against them. And it's because of all these explosive plays they give up, and they give up bundles full of them through the air. So I think this is a good matchup for Colorado's passing offense. Froton, your angle on the props of that one.
Yeah, and conversely, when it comes to Kansas State, they want to run the ball with DJ Giddens. You have an extremely talented Avery Johnson when it comes to his legs. And then with Colorado, surprisingly, 31st in EPA per play overall, their defense allowed. I don't think anybody expected that coming into the season. Like a respectable defensive unit, 46 in success rate, 34th in points per drive. They haven't been 22.5 points per game they're allowing. They're not over 30 points per game. This is quietly like a competent defense. And when it comes to Kansas State, I just think they're going to look at that line and say, all right, well, I think we can assert ourselves against these guys and be able to use that RPO and the dual threat capabilities of Avery Johnson. But if we look at what he's done over the course of the season when it comes to passing, all right, fine. There was their game against Oklahoma State, the 28th, before the bye, where he went 19 of 31 for 259 yards and 3 passing touchdowns. Fine. I feel like this line where he's around the 200.5 passing yards mark is a reaction to that Oklahoma State game. But if you look at what he did before, BYU, they lost 38-9. It doesn't get any more passing script than that. Threw for 130, Arizona, 156, Tulsa, 181, UT Martin, 153. They don't want to throw the ball. They want to run the ball. And against Colorado, does it make sense for them really to be using Avery Johnson and throwing the ball and putting the ball in harm's way? He can't throw. They're going to run the ball. As long as Kansas State has a lead, you're just not going to see them throw. Give me the under 200.5 passing yards for Avery Johnson.
Gene, anything for you in that game?
For me, I just think that this game is interesting because I want to see Colorado's maturity off of a bye week, right? I think that's going to be big. So I'm looking at the line here. When Coach Prime took over, he said, hey, we want to be able to run the ball. We want to be able to stop the run. We knew that wasn't the case in year one. In year two, he's remained confident or remained steadfast in his desire to want to be able to run the ball and stop the run. I think that if they come in with a similar mindset to what they had going into UCF, they're really like a live, a live dog here. And I think they have an opportunity to win outright because we know what they can do through the air. And I think you made a perfect point for me. LaJohntay Wester being healthy. If you ever watch any of their content, LaJohntay Wester is a leader on that team. Even though he just joined the team, he's a leader on that team. The guys who are really, really good look at him as being really, really good. And I think that says a lot. So if this offense gets clicking, if that defense can just hold their water, they get Shadur Sanders back. That's another guy who I think in the run game is going to help for sure. I think Colorado, I would. What do you say that you never like when they say sprinkle? You want to sprinkle something on it, Thor? Like,
Yeah,
I would sprinkle a little something on
beer money
on Colorado.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. Colorado's a handicap specific team. The UCF one, that was a game where they matched up well because of UCF's pass defense. I think they match up well in this one as well because of that issue that we've seen with Kansas State of allowing those explosive passes. Anyway, I like them. Paul B asks us UNC plus 3.5 today. Anyone have any thoughts on the Tar Heels? Anyone got any plays on that Tar Heel game?
I don't off the top of my head, other than I think that Omarion Hampton could have his 100-yard streak broken.
Yeah, and it looks like we're at 4 or 4.5 in the market. Froton, you had a prop on this game, though, I know, on the passing side of UNC.
Yeah, well, I mean, Jacoby Criswell opened up 222.5, which is just simply too low. He threw 38 passes last game. I want to say he steamed up. I want to say he's in the 240s right now, which is a lot more reasonable. I would say after that 20-yard spike, it's probably a non-player, just, down to a lean. But that 222.5 was just incredible. Obviously, I recommended the over on his interceptions last week, which somehow he didn't throw an interception after throwing, 40 passes. But I think just in terms of the script and what they're doing, it's a pretty logical leap to say, all right, well, they're going to keep the passing going. And with Georgia Tech, they're an exceptional run defensive team, but a very poor pass defense team. If you're looking at another prop, man, I gave the Jamal Haynes, I took his under last week, and I rooted within 1 quarter. I think it's going to be tough to stop Jamal Haynes. He's at like 65.5. It's pretty reasonable. I think you'd probably get an over on him.
Yeah, Mike Lukovic asked us about the Avery Johnson over 72 rushing yards. I definitely like that one. Kobe Vercotton asks us, any thoughts on USF plus 8.5? My model has them at a pick-em. We also have a question from Austin Rokas, Ball State and Kent State over. Man, I love the dumpster diving. Does anyone have any? I'll even toss in DJ V asks us, good morning, Braden Locke over 0.5 interceptions. That one, yes. Over on Locke. That is a lock for sure. But does anyone?
They're starting to figure out those interception props, by the way, too. They're juicing the hell out of them. We've been beating them pretty good on those.
Yeah, we gotta stop. We gotta stop talking about those. The books have been getting battered.
They're juicing the heck out of them now.
Yeah, but you agree on that. Any other thoughts? I don't have a play on the South Florida game, or as much as I love that dumpster diving and Ball State and Kent State, you're talking what, 2 of the 3 or 4 worst defenses in the MBS. But yeah, I don't have a play in that one as well. You're over, Gene?
I actually am. If you go on Bet Tracker, you'll see that was one of my early plays this week.
Oh, nice!
Yeah, I was like, yeah, let's take the over in this.
I love that.
Kent State actually showed me some life versus Eastern Michigan with being able to throw the ball and put some points on the board. I think that Ball State can't stop anybody from scoring. Kent State can't stop anybody from scoring. So what do? You take the over.
I love it. Yeah, and for sure, teams that struggle to tackle as well. Can't wait for action. The Onion Man asks, does Notre Dame laying 23 surprise you guys, given Daniels is back for Stanford?
Daniels stinks.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I don't care that he's back. I don't care. I want Elijah Brown in. I've been telling everybody for the whole time. Elijah Brown is the guy that is the future at Stanford. Ashton Daniels is a blank. He's a placeholder.
We got a question from Savo who asks us, why is the Syracuse line moved from -4 to -2 at NC State?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with NC State. I don't understand. I can't give you a reasonable answer on that, because they're definitely, like, their front seven they're just absolutely drained of talent over the course of the half of the season, and you're seeing them just not. I mean, defensively, they got annihilated by Clemson. They're terrible. They're just a terrible defensive team. Now you have a freshman quarterback who's cutting his teeth, second start of his career. I don't get it. I back Syracuse, but it's probably the road thing.
we'll bring up Mike Bainbridge right now, and we'll hit some more of these. We have a few more questions in here that I think people would like to hear from Bainbridge on. So welcome in Mike Bainbridge of the CFF site, the godfather of college fantasy football. Going to do some DFS talk and then also continue our player prep talk with Mr. Bainbridge, one of the best in the business. Bainbridge, how are you doing on this glorious college football Saturday?
Doing well, and I think we're going to pivot real quick, and we're going to jump on one prop play before we get into the DFS talk, because I think this one is going to be eliminated very quickly. We were checking the UCF message boards this morning, and there's talk that if things get off to a rough start, KJ Jefferson could get replaced by Ja'Cory Brown potentially. So
really?
He is still out there at ESPN at 208.5. I would jump on that. We like him, I think, already at the under because he only has one wide receiver left in Kobe Hudson. So that's one that I might take a stab at quick, because that's already getting bet down to 195 at some other books. So.
Man, coming in hot. Last week it was the Singleton. You broke the news for us, like when you jumped on. Absolutely love it. Let's get into the DFS, and then we'll get back to player props. I know we have more that we want to drop, and I know you have thoughts on that as well. But Bainbridge, people want to hear your thoughts on the DFS. I'll just give the dance floor to you. Where do you want to start? You want to start with bargains? You want to start with core plays? Whatever you like. Dance floor is yours.
Yeah, let's start with that same game. Actually, I would build my lineups probably around RJ Harvey, right? Didn't have the greatest game last time out against Colorado, but if there's questions at quarterback, as I just alluded to, they're probably just going to want to lean on the run here. RJ Harvey, one of the elite fantasy running backs in the college football game. Cincinnati's not so great on run D, 102nd in success rate, 86 in EPA. So should be a strong matchup there for RJ Harvey. And then the second one I like, starting at quarterback, I would go with Riley Leonard. I think it's the same thing that I've kind of alluded to with other quarterbacks. You get the run pass element there with Riley Leonard. Really good matchup against Stanford, who's actually surprisingly really good at stopping the run. So I don't know that, they're going to lean on Jeremiah Love as much this week. So I really like Riley Leonard as kind of your core build at quarterback. Then moving on just quick to some mid-tier plays. Tawi Walker, he hit obviously big last week. Chez Meluzzi out of the lineup with 3 rushing touchdowns. I think we go the same route again this week. He's not priced up. He's 5,300. And I'd be curious to your guys' thoughts here too. I'm sure you've covered it on the show. Trey Wisner is 4,100. Which is really cheap, obviously. If some people on this show, Froton, think that he's RB1 now, but it's going to be a really popular play in my opinion with Wisner, just because he's so cheap, and then Blue is obviously in the 7,000 range. I actually if you're going GPP, I actually kind of like the Blue pivot play, just because everyone would be on Wisner. So that'd be kind of a contrarian play with going Blue. Do we have any more thoughts on the Texas running back situation? Yeah. Or have we covered that extensively?
Yeah. Funny you should bring it up. We definitely did. We're fading the heck out of Jaden Blue. And I was laughing as you were talking because I'm looking at Underdog Live. They've done the thing where they pulled the rushing for Blue off the market.
They listen.
They've also pulled Isaiah Bonds, the touchdown, the receiving yards. So yeah, we'll see if they get them back up there. Wisner is up there, by the way. You can't get the full assortment on him, but if you want to go over half a touchdown, it's like the times 1.1 thing on that, and then 12.5 first quarter rushing yards, 23.5 first half rushing yards for Wisner. Pretty fascinating.
They're not giving us the full game, are they? They're not giving us the full game.
They're not going to do that because they know Sark could have that quick trigger finger there and give him the quick hook for Mr. Blue. Yeah, but that's a fascinating one. For Blue, they still have up his touchdown one. They have up 20.5 receiving yards and what feels like an extremely healthy 105.5 combined rushing and receiving yards for Blue. I'm still going under on that one, but yeah, the rushing is yanked, at least from what I can see.
Yeah. We have Chris K to thank if he goes.
Thank you, K. Thank you for our 81.5, K.
More DFS plays, Bainbridge. Did you have any other ones you wanted to toss out there?
Yeah, just some bargain bin options. At Louisville, Isaac Brown is 4,300. He's taken over that backfield as a freshman. He's averaging over 10 yards a carry. And you're getting a starting running back at 4,300. Really like that. And then at Wake Forest, Donovan Green is, of course, out again, as he has been like the last 2.5 years, unfortunately.
He might be redshirting at this point with the amount we're not hearing anything about it.
So he's going to be out again this week. Horatio Fields is 3,900, and he's got 8 targets in each of the last 2 games. We figure it's going to be a pass-heavy game script for Wake Forest as a double-digit underdog against Clemson. So, again, you're not breaking the bank at 3,900. Really like 8 targets each of the last 2 weeks.
Horatio Fields forever.
Boy, should we jump
a
into
little Beatles for you, everyone, just in case, just for Horatio, our boy.
Should we jump into back into player props, unless Bainbridge, you good with the DFS?
Yeah, just I would say it's not a week, just to close, it's not a week to really stack any games, in my opinion. I think you just pick and choose from each game. I don't know if there's one game that's going to be just an absolute shootout in that early slate.
Love it. Let's hop back into the player props, and I'm going to take a look through if we have any stray audience questions about the player props. But Froton, why don't you kick us off with ones that we didn't get through as we went through the slate, just ones you wanted to hit rapid fire.
I have so many I want to hit, though. We're going to start with our boy Brendan Sorsby, quarterback, Cincinnati. I love Brendan Sorsby. I can't help it. I'm not going to apologize for it.
Good matchup.
Open 240.5 passing yards. I think he's up to like 249 right now. I still think this is a go. As well as speaking of interception props, I can't help myself. We have an interception prop on Brandon Sorsby. It's 0.5 interceptions at even money to the under. He's thrown 1 interception in 5 games, and it was last week in a 44-41 mega shootout against Texas Tech. You're going to give me even money on the under for his interceptions? The savvy Brendan Sorsby? Done. I like both of those. UCF's past these brutal. 116th in success rate, 70% completion rate allowed. It's 125th. Go to the bank.
And Froton, if I can hop in there real quick, I agree with you on the passing yards for Sorsby. The other thing is, vis-a-vis the UCF defense, their pass defense is horrific. Their run defense is really good. We talked about this in advance of the UCF Colorado game. One of the reasons I was on Colorado and was hitting all the overs on the Colorado passing, because UCF's pass defense is atrocious. But UCF is going to be able to shut out the lights on Cincinnati's run game. Have we heard about Kiner's status?
He's playing.
He's playing. Okay. Was carted off the field in the last game. He is playing, but this is a really, really tough matchup for Kiner. Froton, I'm sorry about that. Continue.
Don't you dare apologize for injecting that goodness. Zachary Franklin, wide receiver, Illinois, listed on underdog at -130 at four receptions. Dude, he is smoking that. He went under last game because they didn't need to do much. Every time they have a competitive game, he's going 5, 6, 7, 8 receptions with those short, quick, precision, essentially extended handoff passes from Luke Altmaier. That's what they do. You're going to give me 4 receptions, so that's a push at 4. Okay, done. That's happening. Over. Additionally, Jake Brittingstool, Clemson. I know they're playing at Wake Forest, but he's at 40.5 receiving yards again on ESPN Bet. Last week, he was 52 or something like that. They just keep lining the heck out of him. Where he's only cracked 30 yards, I want to say, once in 5 games. And they're going to have a little cupcake against Wake Forest where they're just going to bowl them over, do essentially whatever they want. They're not going to have to go to Brittingstool and lean on him like they did last year. And they haven't been because they have a healthy wide receiver core, don't they, Michael? We'll get to that. Last, I'll go with one more before I go give you guys a break and let you go. Jalen Jackson, Iowa State. I'll give it up to my co-host over at Fantasy Points, Josh Chevalier, for this one. Really liked it. 47.5 rushing yards at -110, on FanDuel. He has taken over that backfield. Abu Sama, as we discussed multiple times on this show and others, he's done. It's over for Abu Sama. You can Sama your way out to the bench, okay? Give me Jalen Jackson. 47.5 is very reasonable for the RB1 over there at Iowa State.
I assume then that you would be under on the Abu Sama 32.5 rushing yards in that game.
Under.
Yeah, the WVU defense, that's another tilted one that we love to talk about. You can throw on that team. So Rocco, yeah, I think I like the over. And did you bring up Higgins?
I like Rocco over
that
too.
one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like both of those overs. Higgins is like 73. Rocco's like 240.
Higgins up to 85.5.
Oh,
yeah.
well, it wasn't when me and Mike bet it early in the week.
I love it.
85.5 is a lot. I might have to chill out on that, but I love the 73 because that's like his range. Like I feel great about the 70s on him.
Yeah, that's interesting.
There's been a lot of line movement this week. A lot of it. More than I've seen in the previous 6 weeks. Honestly, it's been a lot.
I'm seeing a lot of underdog is being aggressive with the yanking this stuff off the board.
Yeah.
We're
hitting them hard, guys. We're hitting them hard, boys.
Yeah,
we got them running.
They're also aggressive at limiting your accounts too.
Yes.
Oh, for sure.
Well, Bainbridge has been dying to get that dig in.
We know all about that. Bainbridge, your favorite prop plays today, or anyone's?
Yeah, I don't think the books have accounted for yet. I mean, they're starting to now, but I don't think they fully accounted for CJ Daniels being out for LSU. I really like some ladder plays with Aaron Anderson. We have him in the mid 80s this week. And I think you can still get his props around 64. There might even be some 59.5 out there. But my favorite one.
I'm sorry, but they've been putting, Anderson has been a value all season long, and I don't get it. And this is a great point you're bringing up, Bainbridge. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just he's so consistent, right? He's getting 5 receptions literally every single game. But I kind of lean towards Mason Taylor being my top play. He's still listed at 44.5 receiving yards. We adjusted our projections at the CFF site. We got him at 5.5 receptions and 62 yards now. You can get plus money on ESPN at 4.5 receptions over. So I like that. And then, but his yardage at 44.5. Ole Miss has kind of struggled to defend the tight end position. Josh Simon had 5 receptions on 7 targets a week ago for South Carolina. Holden Willis had 93 yards for Middle Tennessee State in his matchup with Ole Miss. But yeah, still a quote unquote tight end over the middle of the field. So yeah, we like the over at 44.5 for Mason Taylor this week.
One other one.
Taylor auto. There you go. You know you were getting it. I love me some Mason Taylor.
Yeah, they love that manufactured stuff for Taylor and stuff out the play action one out. One that we haven't brought up yet that I know both me and Froton like, and I assume that you do too as well, Bainbridge. But the Fafita, the over on the interception, he throws one every friggin' game. Like, you know, and then they love to throw with him. And in this game at BYU, they're going to have to. Earlier this week, his passing attempts was 35.5.
Yep. Good one.
I'm sure it's got to be up right now. I'm not seeing the live one.
It's about the same. It's 36, 35. Oh. I checked this morning. It was at 35 still. Yeah, I'm absolutely on the over. Absolutely.
The only way that he would lose that is if the game script flipped where Arizona was then blowing out BYU on the road. I don't know. That BYU team is pretty good. So I don't see that. Other ones for me, I really like Kyle Monangai. I just a general, but this is another week I'm going to be playing him. Wisconsin's run defense is not good. And Kyle Monangai, he's lined under 100. Some of these guys, it's been the aggressive movement throughout the week. Froton's mentioning that this is one of the craziest line movements weeks that we've seen in college football in the market. Monangai has pretty much held steady there in the high 90s and has now broken the 100-yard threshold. He'll be breaking the 100-yard threshold in that game this afternoon against the Badgers. Rotten run defense. I also like Rutgers in that game with the line under a field goal. Too. We mentioned before that we're fading the heck out of Braden Locke, who had the pop-off game last week against that dead as a doornail Purdue team. Now you have to go to the East Coast in this one. Rutgers has an awesome pass defense. You can run the ball on Rutgers a little bit. It is really difficult to throw on that team. So that, you know, another sort of angle there. Looking through my other tickets to see if there's any other ones that I have that we have not brought up yet. I think we hit all of them that I had. Froton, you one that I don't know if you brought up with the Ohio State Oregon game. You had an angle on Terrence Ferguson.
Fergie, yeah.
Yeah.
I had gotten him at 25.5 earlier in the week. I think he's up to 27, 28, somewhere in that ballpark right now. And the thing is with Ferguson, he's a veteran. We've seen him. He's well established in that, that he's going to be the tight end. And keep in mind, this line that they're setting up, that high 20s, he has croaked that pretty much every week against, upper echelon or, FBS opponents, with the exception of UCLA, right? So he's gone literally 27 every single game, except for that UCLA one. And the one against UCLA one, it was an extremely lopsided game. I was in attendance for and literally on the field. They didn't have to do anything. They had that game in the bag as soon as it started. The only way that UCLA even scored was because Braylon Addison, former Oregon Duck wide receiver, now a safety, intercepted a pass and took it all the way back for a touchdown. Otherwise, they wouldn't have scored. He caught one pass for 18 yards in that game. He caught like a 30-yard downfield seam stretch play where he caught it, had it, wrapped it up, and then he got a helmet-to-helmet hit that dislodged the ball, and he didn't play for the rest of the game. If they needed him, and if he was out there, he would have played. He would have been fine. Last game against Michigan State, 2 catches, 82 yards. They use him up that seam. I think they're going to have to use Ferguson. They're not going to be out there, stretching the field, as we discussed with Ohio State. They're going to have to go and pepper him. I like him over 27.5.
But before we get into our plays of the day, just wanted to empty the clip on any other plays that we hadn't mentioned yet. And Gene, I'll kick it to you in a second for other ones that you haven't. And then at the end, we'll get into the plays of the day here in about 3-4 minutes. We started a little bit late, so we'll give you guys a couple extra minutes here. One play that I have that we haven't hit on yet, way off the grid. I like Rice today, hosting UTSA. This is definitely a hold your nose and jump kind of a deal. But Rice, I got him at 4.5 earlier this week, and the live line on this one, it's still 4. I'm definitely taking that. I think Rice wins this game. Both these teams like to throw, and with Rice, basically their whole offense is through Mean Dean Connors. So it's all they snap it and then they just throw it to him right away. Because of that, you can't sack EJ Warner because the ball's out in like 1 second. If it's not going to Mean Dean Connors, it's one of it's the extended handoff thing, right? You're going to the slot or whatever on the quick hitting stuff. Because of that, again, they don't give up sacks or pressures. UTSA, their defense has greatly regressed. The only thing they're still decent at is pass rush. If their pass rush can't get home, you can light them up through the secondary. Rice's passing game, it's limited for sure, but this is UTSA struggles in terms of allowing wide open targets. They're one of the worst in the nation. And also in tackle rate, UTSA is one of the worst in the nation. Rice just wants to get the ball into space immediately after the snap and then force you to tackle. UTSA's defense stinks at that. And then on the other side, UTSA, even though they lost Frank Harris, they're still pass. Rice, but it's more downfield certainly than Rice's. Rice has a really good pass defense. It's the strength of that team. You can run on them, but UTSA doesn't care to run. Rice can also get after the quarterback, and UTSA both has been allowing pressures and sacks, but in terms of the negative plays, but then also the turnovers generated off that. I think this is an ambush spot for Rice in a sort of hold your nose and jump kind of a deal. Gene, any other plays today that we didn't hit on before we get to the plays of the day on the round robin?
Absolutely, and definitely make sure that you're going to the Fantasy Life best bets section and checking out our college football best bets. We've been killing it this year. If you're trying to make some bread, you probably want to go over there and holler at us. A couple plays. North Texas. I like North Texas today. At FAU, I think North Texas offense is just going to drown FAU. I don't think FAU has the firepower to stay with them. The efficiency to stay with them. We talked about UCF. I'm on UCF regardless of who the quarterback is. I don't think it's a quarterback day. I think it's a running day. And I think that they're going to be able to run and stop the run. I like UCF minus 3.5. We talked about Washington. A late night, double up your money type of play. Boise State, 20.5 at Hawaii. Sorry, Hawaii. Like, you're not stopping this dude from running the ball. They do a good job of not only running him. I think me and some friends were talking because people were trying to like compare him to really imaginative running backs like Reggie Bush, and I thought that was a really bad comp. I say if you want to know who Gene T is, he's Isaiah Pacheco. He's Isaiah Pacheco in college. He's just runs hard, like runs through tackles that you don't think he's going to run through. kind of a crash test dummy sometimes, but it works for him. I think Boise State definitely gets it done. Minus 20.5 versus Hawaii. Yeah, and so those are mine. But getting into my coach's corner, for me,
yeah, let's start it up.
Yeah, for me, I look at it this way: when things are working, you don't upset the apple cart, right? Army,
the stimulus package.
They have been doing their thing, and the stimulus package still lives. Shout out to Navy. They're on a bye week. We'll see you in a week. But Army's playing, and guess who they're playing? They're playing that same UAB team that I told you Navy was going to be a couple weeks ago. They're playing that same UAB team that I told you Tulane was going to absolutely obliterate last week. Guess who's going to beat them really badly this week? Army. But those big spreads with these service academies get a little bit crazy because they will give you a couple scores, especially early when they're trying to calibrate what you do. So I could see UAB putting 10, maybe even 14 points on the board. And that's all Army needs, because Army's going to put the rest of the points on the board. I like this game, UAB at Army, over 55.5. I think Army smokes them. I would have went with a 2-pick parlay, same game parlay. If you want to, I'm not mad at you at all. I might sprinkle a little something on there myself. But I think that this game is one of those games where you can put it on the board.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bainbridge, let's go to you for the next one. Your prop of the day.
Yeah, it was going to be Mason Taylor over 44.5 originally, but I think it's the KJ Jefferson play now. He is down to 201.5 on ESPN. He is completely removed from Caesars right now. So if you can jump on that, I would do that immediately. So
I'm seeing
they're nervous.
Yeah, I don't see lines for him right now on some of the things I'm seeing. That's crazy.
Oh, I love when the books get scared.
Yeah, Bainbridge, can you say again what one more time that bookie's up at right now?
ESPN 201.5.
Okay, ESPN bet, folks. Get on that one. Bainbridge play of the day. Froton, your torpedo.
Yeah, the name says it all. ESPN bet that line right now. My torpedo, as we alluded to, LSU running back. He's going to be used as a wide receiver. Caden Durham. Fortunately, they had a bye last week. Was a little banged up the previous game. Has been practicing and is probable for this game, which is great because Caden Durham has shown himself to be an elite freshman running back that everybody is excited about. And what's exciting about him isn't just his ability to run the ball. But if you look at the last two games against South Alabama and UCLA, 2 targets, 2 catches, 40 yards and a touchdown, and he looked electric doing it. And then their last game against South Alabama, 3 catches on 4 targets, 89 yards and a touchdown. You're going to line Caden Durham at 11.5, 13.5 yards after those 2 showings, and where you know that this LSU team needs to create yardage against Ole Miss, who's going to have no problem scoring against them. They're going to need to manufacture some yardage and some explosive plays. Caden Durham has proved that he is dangerous out of the backfield. 71-yard touchdown reception last game. Over 13.5, over 11.5, over whatever you want and a half.
Boys, we're moving lines this morning unlike anything I've ever seen. Jaden Blue is down 8 yards from 40 minutes ago in his rushing total. There's several other ones. I'm sort of dropping my jaw here, but Jaden Blue, we just talked about him, was at 78.5. He is down to 70.5. There's several other ones. I was just sort of chuckling going through some of those. Appreciate everyone again for watching today. My play of the day today, and I alluded to it a little bit before, we're going to the Colorado-Kansas State game. I'm over on Shadir Sanders, 299.5 passing yards. The analytical profile of that Kansas State pass defense that I was talking about before, the thing that you can do is rip them for explosive passing plays. That's what's going to be going down today. Kansas State's passing defense, 114th in marginal explosiveness, 108th in yards per successful drop back, 115th on anyway, I could go on and on. Their past defensive metrics of getting ripped for explosive plays is absolutely ludicrous. And where you want to avoid them is on the ground. Colorado doesn't care. They're only going to throw. I love pairing Wester with Shadir Sanders as well. And I agree with what Gene said before. I think that Colorado is live. I still don't think the market is totally caught up to what we have seen on the field with Colorado. That team is sneaky because their defense has improved. Their offensive line has improved a little bit, and they have a little bit of a rushing element now, whereas before they didn't, at least as far as like a changeup to keep you off it or a breaking pitch to keep you off the fastball. But I'm going over, and if you want to get crazy with the parlay, how about that Colorado money line with Shadir Sanders over, with Wester over? That would juice up your odds there. But everyone, appreciate everyone for tuning in. We had another great audience today. Appreciate all your questions as well. We're going to be back same time, same place next week. For my co-host, Eric Froton of NBC Sports, the coach, Gene Clemons, and our weekly special guest, Mike Bainbridge, bringing all the DFS lineup. I've been your host, Thor Nystrom. We'll see you next week. Let's go cash some tickets.